Hey everyone, welcome back to another Halo Wars guide video. In this series I'm going to be going over some of the basics and the mechanics and how everything works in Halo Wars 2. If you're interested in other videos in this series, well, there's a whole playlist going over specific leaders and factions and styles of gameplay. But for today's video I'm going to be going over how cloaking works in Halo Wars 2. There seems to be a few comments of people requesting how cloaking should operate in Halo Wars 2, and I'm happy to make a video on that. We're going to go ahead and start with the Banished, because they have a little bit more to deal with cloaking than UNSC. What's really interesting about the Banished is they actually have a Cloaking Generator turret, and we'll get to that in a minute while I research the Tech 3. For the sake of this video, I kind of implemented some cheat codes, I guess. Now, there's a few things to learn about how cloaking works when you're playing as the Banished. First of all, the thing that deals with cloaking is a sensor tower. Now, with what a sensor tower does is it does two things. One is that it detects cloaked units, and secondly, it increases the line of sight around your base. So this is really important on maps actually just like Sentry. I have turned off Fog of War for the sake of this video to make things easier for you to see, but once this turret constructs, the line of sight will actually increase to the area around the base. And the more sensor towers that you add, the more increased line of sight that you'll get. However, in regards with how cloaking works, this doesn't necessarily mean that more sensor towers are going to mean that you're going to detect cloaked units faster or anything else. The only, I guess, increase you'll get is that you'll be able to detect cloaked units from a further distance away the more sensor towers that you add. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend adding more than, say, 2. The reason being is I really highly recommend that it's a requirement actually, every Banished base should have at least one shield generator on it. And we're going to go ahead and actually skip that, and we're going to build a cloaking generator. And you should only always have one cloaking generator at a base at a time. Reason being is a cloaking generator just simply cloaks your base. If your opponent doesn't have any detect units, they won't be able to see your base at all. If they do have detect units, of course they will be able to see your base. So it makes no sense to have more than one cloaking generator, because if they detect your base, well, they detect your base. So it doesn't make any sense to add more than one cloaking generator. You're actually just throwing your supplies away and wasting a turret slot in the process. It's better off being used as a shield generator or a sensor tower. So what you'll see, I'll speed the video up in this process, but once this cloaking generator finishes construction, all of these UNSC units that are attacking me won't be able to do any more damage. I guess for whatever inexplicable reason, he may be leaving. So once this tower finishes constructing, he actually has combat tech marines already. It won't be able to do any more damage to the base. There we go. The base is now cloaked. These marines don't have detect in. Well, he's just going to have to leave. So I'll see you, James. Let's move on to the types of units that have detect on the Banished side. And there's actually quite a high amount of units on Banished that have detect. First is Elite Rangers. Elite Rangers have detect. So they'll be able to... it works in two different ways. If a Nightingale on the UNSC side uses the Y ability, which is the smoke which cloaks units, or buildings, I should say, if the UNSC has a Nightingale that does the Y ability of the smoke on a base, the Elite Rangers will be able to detect that, and your entire army will also benefit from that detect. So anything that's around the unit that has detect, and the detect unit can go through the cloak or the smoke, whatever the case may be, the rest of your army will have that ability as well. You can also tell at any point in time if you forget which units have detect by simply taking your cursor off the units and going on the units again. And it's kind of hard to see, maybe the video doesn't really do it all that much justice, but you'll see a little bit of a ripple effect going across the screen, and that means that unit has detect. If you were to go over, say, another unit like Grunts, they don't have detect. You won't see that ripple happen at all. If you go over Elite Rangers, they do. A few other units that have detect are Engineers on the Banished side, as well as Shrouds. And there's also a few units that can get an upgrade to add detect. One of them is the shrapnel rounds for the choppers. you research this, and I'll go ahead and make a chopper. And I set my rally point over here. This will just be where all of the detect units will kind of converge. So now that we have the upgrade, the shrapnel rounds upgrade for the choppers, you can see that the choppers do have some detect. That ripple effect is going across the chopper. As well as engineers, they also have detect as well. So any of these types of units can detect cloaked bases and cloaked units. What about if you want to do some cloaking yourselves? Well, this is where the Shroud comes into play. There's also a few abilities in Halo Wars 2 that allows for cloaking. I think, this could be wrong because I never play as the two, but Arbiter and Shipmaster have cloaking powers. I know Shipmaster does as the mass cloak. I forget if Arbiter does, which is definitely cringe. But you can see if you do the Y ability for your Shrouds, that creates really a shroud of cloak in this area around the circle. So any units that go in there during that time, they will benefit from cloak. And you'll see a little silhouette go around your units as they kind of move into this cloak. And that's to give you indication that they are cloaked. Kind of the same silhouette that you see on the base from a cloaking generator. So all of these units here, not only can they not attack the base, but for a short period of time, they cannot attack any of these units because they don't have detect. So they're aiming for the engineer because the engineer is not in this shroud of cover. And that does end, of course. But that's just really a heads up. The engineers, the area you see around here is the engineer's shield, which gives a DPS, I guess, debuff. It has a damage reduction in that area of effect, but the Shroud one is the cloaked. That's the Shroud's Y ability. So Shrouds work great. I can't tell you how many times I'll go attack an enemy base and they have either turrets or something else, and activate the Shroud's Y ability, and they don't have any detect on their base. So whether it's a UNSC or Banished, they don't have any sensor towers at all. That's why I recommend at all times you have at least one sensor tower. You have no idea if someone's going to show up as Shipmaster and activate the mass cloaking ability, and then you won't be able to really see anything with your turrets. Your turrets won't be able to fire. Or someone shows up with Shrouds, or Shipmaster's final upgrade for the Honor Guard unit itself. It gives it a permanent cloak. Or for another example is Voridus's final upgrade. He becomes cloak in infusion as well. So there's a lot of cloaking going on the Banished side. So that's why it's always important to have sensor towers and fight fire with fire. Make a cloaking generator yourself. And you can see by adding the sensor tower, you see that ripple effect on the base as well. It's kind of hard to see, meaning that the base has detect. On the UNSC side, there's not really a whole lot to showcase. Really, it's just the Nightingale is the main unit that does cloaking on the UNSC side. The UNSC does not have any cloaking generators either. But the Nightingales work out great a lot of times using their Y ability to kind of smoke units. So you can either do this offensively or defensively. You can use the Y ability of the Nightingales to cloak an opponent's army. And when that cloaks them, they won't be able to attack you because they're cloaked and they won't be able to see your army. Or you can do it the other way around. Defensively, you can go ahead and do the Y ability on your own units. And if your opponent doesn't have any detect, they won't be able to fire upon you either. So it kind of works two ways. You can also use it against buildings and bases. I use it quite often. If you watch our Super Turtles, I'll bring a Marine and a Nightingale, and I'll cloak the Marine while it's taking the node, just to kind of help me out. Or you can use it when you're scouting. You can like send a Shroud if you want to see what your opponent is doing, but you don't want them to know that you're scouting them. You just send a Shroud over, activate the Y ability, and as long as they don't have any watchtowers or sensor towers, so this guy does, meaning even if I do my Y ability of the Shroud over here, he will still detect me. By and large, that's really the basics of how cloaking and detect works in Halo Wars 2. Some of the UNSC units that have detect are the Nightingale. Jackrabbits, when they're upgraded, they have detect. And I want to say snipers have detect as well. Don't cloak me on that. Don't quote me on that. Honestly, I think just cloaking and detect just works best as when you're playing as Banished. You can see that Warthog is able to attack me, and that silhouette disappears, by the way, when they have detect. So you'll see it vanish here, and the units will go ahead and start attacking me. If you have any more further questions about this, feel free to post it in the comments down below, and I'll try to do my best to answer your questions. If you want more in-depth guides going over specific leaders, gameplay styles, like I said at the beginning of the video, there's a whole playlist for you to check out. Also on my Discord server, there's tons of players, Halo Wars 2 players, over 4,000 of them, both of varying skill levels to low skill levels to high level players. We're always available to answer any specific Halo Wars questions, so join our Discord server, and we actually have a bot storehouse that helps your Halo Wars 2 experience as well. That's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you, James.